The Vethari Council Chamber rotated through its 3,000-year cycle of twilight, artificial day, and false night. High Counselor Tivar watched the holographic display with eyes that had seen 100 standard cycles of peaceful governance. The image showed the outer colony of Vethar 9, or what remained of it. Spires that had once touched the sky now lay as shattered teeth against a burning horizon. The swarm will reach the core systems within 40 cycles, Admiral Karel stated, his voice carrying the weight of a military man who had witnessed the impossible. We have lost 14 colony worlds. Our defensive fleets are reduced to 37% operational capacity. Tivar's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement, and the refugees. 2 billion souls displaced. Another 3 billion remain in evacuation corridors that are collapsing faster than we can reinforce them. The chamber fell into the kind of silence that only comes when a species faces its extinction. The Vethari had known peace for so long that war had become an academic concept, something studied in historical archives rather than experienced in the flesh. Now, the flesh was burning. War Master Selkith proposed the emergency protocol, Counselor Mveth said, her voice barely above a whisper. The one we never thought we would use. Tivar felt his stomach turn. The protocol was ancient, implemented during the founding of the Dominion when the species believed they might one day encounter threats beyond their ability to manage. It authorized contact with any species designated as potentially hostile for the purpose of mutual defense. Humanity, he said, the word feeling wrong in his mouth. The holographic display shifted to show a blue planet, smaller than Vethar Prime, covered in water and clouds. The humans who lived there were violent, chaotic, and had spent their entire recorded history fighting each other over resources, beliefs, and abstract concepts that made no sense to Vethari logic. They had mastered faster-than-light travel only 6 generations ago and had already established colonies across 200 systems. They were expanding at a rate that bordered on exponential. These are the beings we would invite into our home, Counselor Javex asked, his scales flushing with indignation. They have no unified government. They wage war on themselves while exploring the stars. Their history shows genocide, ecological collapse, and weapons of mass destruction used against their own kind. They also advanced from atmospheric flight to interstellar travel in less than 3 generations, Admiral Karel countered. Their adaptability is unmatched. Their capacity for violence suggests they know how to fight. The capacity for violence is precisely what concerns me, Javex replied. What is to stop them from turning those weapons on us once the swarm is defeated? Tivar raised a hand, silencing the chamber. We have no choice. The swarm does not negotiate. It does not retreat. It consumes. If we do nothing, we die. If we contact humanity and they refuse, we die. If they come and destroy us afterward, we have at least purchased time for future generations to rebuild. He looked at each council member in turn. I am not interested in dying with clean hands while my people burn. Send the message. The transmission went into the void 3 cycles later, carefully crafted to convey desperation without weakness. They offered technology, resources, and a permanent alliance. They asked for shelter for their people. The human response arrived 7 cycles later, faster than any Vethari communication had ever traveled. It was a single line of text, translated by their primitive but functional translation matrix. We are coming. 3 cycles after that, a single human vessel emerged from fold space above Vethar Prime. It was unarmed as far as the Vethari could detect, and it carried a delegation of 7 humans. Ambassador Teresa Vance stepped onto the arrival platform with the kind of calm confidence that made Tivar nervous. She was smaller than a Vethari adult, soft-bodied, and lacked any visible natural weapons, but her eyes held something that unsettled him. High Counselor, she said, her voice carrying through the translator with perfect clarity. On behalf of the United Human Systems, I accept your request for refuge. Tivar inclined his head. We are grateful for your swift response. Your ships and people will be given sanctuary worlds in our outer systems. We have prepared. Ambassador Vance raised a hand. There's been a misunderstanding, Counselor. When we received your transmission, we analyzed your situation. The swarm is not a threat you can hide from. It will find your sanctuary worlds. It will consume them, and then it will find us. She stepped closer, and Tivar felt something shift in the air. Her voice dropped slightly, carrying an edge that made his scales prickle. Humanity does not hide from threats, Counselor. We eliminate them. The chamber's alarms began to sound. On the view screen, hundreds of human ships began emerging from fold space, flanked by massive structures that Tivar's sensors could not identify. They were not refugee vessels. They were warships, engineering platforms, and something else entirely. You asked for refuge, Ambassador Vance said, her smile revealing teeth that seemed far too sharp for such a soft creature. We brought generals, engineers, and warships. We don't just save our own, Counselor. We don't abandon people who ask for help. That's not what we do. Tivar watched the human fleet assemble with terrifying precision, and realized that the Dominion's request for sanctuary had been answered in the only way humanity knew how. They had come to fight. And something in his ancient heart told him that the swarm had never faced anything like the beings now descending on his world. Response. The first human warships settled into orbit around Vethar Prime, each one a stark contrast to the elegant, curving vessels of the Dominion fleet. Human ships were angular, utilitarian, and bristled with weapon mounts that seemed almost excessive. They had no interest in aesthetics. Every surface, every curve, every angle served a single purpose: maximum combat effectiveness. Admiral Kairel stood in the observation dome of the Vethari Command Center, watching the human arrival with a mixture of awe and terror. His tactical display showed 347 human vessels, ranging from massive dreadnoughts to small, fast-moving escort ships. But it was the other structures that drew his attention. "What are those?" he asked, pointing to the 5 massive platforms that had positioned themselves in a protective formation around the human fleet. Ambassador Vance had accompanied him to the command center, her presence now a permanent fixture in Vethari military operations. Engineering platforms. Each one carries a manufacturing capacity equivalent to your largest orbital facility. They're designed to build, repair, and refit ships in combat conditions. Kairel's mandibles clicked in disbelief. In combat conditions, you build ships while fighting. One of our specialties. Vance moved to the tactical display, her fingers dancing across controls that were clearly not designed for her physiology. We call it mobile fleet support. You lose a ship, we replace it. You damage a ship, we repair it. You need something new, we build it. She pulled up a schematic that made Kairel's heart race. It was a weapon platform, massive and brutal, designed to be deployed in the path of an enemy fleet. "This is a defensive barrier array," she explained. "It projects a kinetic shield over a predetermined area. You put it between your fleet and the swarm, and they can't get through until they burn through its power reserves, and we can build more." "How long does it take to manufacture?" 3 cycles for the frame, another 2 for the power systems. We have 6 already in production. Kairel stared at the numbers on the display. The Dominion had been fighting the swarm for 200 cycles and had never considered a defensive solution of this scale. They had always thought in terms of fighting the swarm directly, ship against ship, slowly losing ground. "Your engineering capabilities exceed ours," he admitted, the words tasting bitter. "But you did not bring only engineers. Where are your generals?" Vance smiled that unsettling human smile. "They're already working. Your outer colonies, the ones you've lost. They're studying the battle recordings, analyzing the swarm's tactics, and developing counter-strategies. They were supposed to be evacuated. They were 3 days ago. While you were arguing about whether to contact us, we were already moving." She opened a new display showing the outer colony of Vethar 9. The orbital facility was gone. The human ground teams had established a defensive perimeter, and a refugee transport was lifting off from the surface. Karel felt his knees weaken. You went a Vethar 9 without authorization. That's a hostile zone, the swarm. The swarm is predictable. It attacks in waves, uses the same approach patterns, and retreats to regroup when it takes significant losses. We've been tracking its behavior for 11 cycles. We have its patterns mapped across every engagement in your records. She turned to face him fully. Your people have been fighting the swarm from a position of weakness for 200 cycles. You've been reacting to its attacks, trying to predict its movements through passive observation. We took a different approach. We analyzed it. We learned how it fights, how it thinks, how it operates. We built models that predict its next moves with 73% accuracy. 73%. That's impossible. Our best strategists can barely achieve 20%. Vance shrugged. Our species has been fighting itself for thousands of years. We've had a lot of practice. She looked away from him toward the view of her fleet assembling in orbit. We don't just learn from our enemies, Admiral. We become them. We think like them. We anticipate their every move, and then we destroy them. Karel watched the human ships arranging themselves into formations that made no sense to his military training. They were too close together, too vulnerable to concentrated fire. But as he watched, he realized the formations were designed to overlap defensive fields, creating a shield of kinetic protection that covered the entire fleet. They were not just thinking like the swarm. They were thinking beyond it, anticipating responses the swarm hadn't even conceived. The swarm will throw everything at us, Karel warned. They have no concept of surrender, no fear, no hesitation. Vance nodded. Neither do we. She pulled up another display, this one showing a human soldier in combat armor. The suit was covered in weapons, including some that Karel couldn't identify. The soldier's face was visible through a transparent visor, and his expression was hard, focused, and utterly without fear. We've been preparing for this moment for 200 years, Vance said. We've seen your transmissions, watched your battles, analyzed your losses. We knew the swarm was coming for you, and we knew it would eventually come for us. She looked at Karel with those terrifying human eyes. We didn't come here to save you, Admiral. We came here to save ourselves. But to do that, we need to win. And we will win. Because humans don't lose wars. We lose battles, we lose worlds, we lose everything we love. But we don't lose wars, not in the end, not when it matters. Karel wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that these strange, violent, impossible beings could do what the Dominion had failed to do for 2 centuries. But a part of him, the ancient part that had seen civilizations rise and fall, that had watched species burn and empires crumble, that part whispered a warning. Humanity had come to fight, but humanity also had a history of fighting each other. And when the swarm was gone, what would stop them from turning their terrifying abilities against the Dominion itself? He pushed the thought aside. For now the enemy was the swarm. For now they had allies. For now there was hope. But in the deep spaces of his mind he began to plan, just in case. General Rasmus Thorn stood in the center of the Vethari Military Command Center, surrounded by holographic displays that showed every engagement humanity had ever fought against the swarm. He was a tall man with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen more combat than most Vethari had experienced in their entire lives. "Show me the approach pattern for the Vethar 7 engagement," he ordered. The display shifted, showing a swirling mass of swarm vessels approaching a Vethari defensive line. The swarm ships were organic, living creatures that had been modified with mechanical components. They moved with a fluid grace that made them difficult to target, twisting and turning in ways that broke the laws of physics. Thorn watched the engagement unfold, his expression unchanging. When it was over, he turned to his staff of human tactical analysts. "Pattern recognition?" he asked. 83% consistent across all recorded engagements, one of his analysts replied. They use the same approach vector, the same formation, the same attack patterns. They learn from losses, but they're slow. It takes them an average of 12 engagements to adapt to new tactics. What about the new tactics we deployed on Vethar 9? The analyst checked his data slate. We used the kinetic barrier array to create a choke point, then flanked them with our fast attack frigates. They lost 47% of their forces in that engagement. Initial analysis suggests they'll adapt, but it'll take them at least 15 cycles to develop a counter-strategy. Thorne nodded, satisfied. That gives us time. What about their command structure? Unknown. We haven't been able to identify a central authority or command node. They seem to operate as a collective, each component responding to the whole. It's possible there's no single point of failure. Then we create one. Thorne turned to the Vethari admiral who had been watching the human officer's work. Your people have been fighting the swarm as if it's a conventional enemy. You've been trying to destroy its ships one at a time. That's inefficient. We need to hurt it. We need to make it feel pain. Kairel's scales rippled with confusion. The swarm doesn't feel pain. It's not a living thing in that sense. It's a force of nature. No, it's not. Thorne's voice was flat without emotion. It moves in patterns. It reacts to threats. It adjusts its behavior based on losses. Those are signs of intelligence, not nature. Something is guiding it. Something is controlling it. And when we find that something, we destroy it. He gestured to the tactical display. Your people have been fighting a defensive war. You've been trying to protect your worlds, your people, your way of life. That's understandable, but it's also wrong. You can't defend against a threat like this. You have to attack. You have to take the war to them. Kairel felt his stomach turn. Attack. We don't know where their home world is. We don't know. We do. Thorne pulled up a new display showing a star chart. We analyzed their movement patterns, their approach vectors, their retreat paths. Everything points to this sector. He highlighted a region of space that Kairel knew well. The Cygnus Nebula. We've been tracking their signals for 90 cycles. They're coming from there. That's their origin point. Kairel stared at the display in disbelief. The Cygnus Nebula is dangerous. There are radiation storms, gravitational anomalies, unpredictable. We know. We've already sent probes. The swarm's home world is there. We found it. The Vethari command center fell into absolute silence. Kairel felt his legs give way, and he sat heavily in his command chair. You found it. How? We've been searching for the source of the swarm for 200 cycles, and you found it in 7 cycles. Thorne's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Because we weren't looking for a planet, Admiral. We were looking for a pattern. The swarm isn't natural. It was created. It's a weapon, and weapons have builders. He pulled up an image from the probes, showing a massive structure orbiting a dead star. The structure was ancient, damaged, and covered in the organic growth that characterized the swarm. But beneath the organic matter, there were clear signs of advanced technology. That's not a swarm construction, Kairel whispered. That's something else. It's the source, Thorne confirmed, and we're going to destroy it. Kairel felt a surge of hope that quickly turned to dread. You can't do that. If the structure is the source, destroying it will. Destroy the swarm, yes, that's the idea. Thorne met Kairel's gaze with those cold human eyes. We're not going to fight the swarm forever. We're going to end it, quickly, decisively. We have the plan, we have the resources, we have the will. We need your permission to launch the offensive. Kairel opened his mouth to speak, to object, to point out the millions of ways this could go wrong. But no words came, because he realized something in that moment that changed everything. Humanity had been planning this from the beginning. They had seen the swarm as a problem to be solved, a threat to be eliminated, a challenge to be overcome. They had never considered the possibility of failure. They didn't know how to lose. And that absolute certainty, that terrifying confidence, was the most alien thing Kairel had ever witnessed. You have our permission, he heard himself say, and our gratitude. Thorne nodded once. We'll need your fleets for the offensive, your ships, your crews, your tactical knowledge. We can't do this alone. But you have warships, you have engineers, you. We have tools, we need allies. The Vethari Dominion has fought the swarm for 2 centuries. You know its weaknesses, its patterns, its secrets. We've learned from your data. Now you need to learn from us. He extended his hand, the strange human gesture of peace that Kairel had learned to accept. We're going to fight this war together, Thorn said, and we're going to win. Kairel looked at the human's hand at the offer of alliance and felt something shift in his ancient heart. He reached out and clasped the human's hand, feeling the warmth of living flesh against his scales. Together, he agreed, to victory. But even as he spoke the words, a part of him wondered if the victory would taste sweet, or if it would burn like the ashes of a world consumed. The War Council convened in the human flagship's command center, a cavernous space dominated by holographic displays showing the swarm's home structure in the Cygnus Nebula. Human officers stood alongside Vethari commanders, their differences in physiology stark, but their expressions unified by purpose. General Thorn stood at the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied the display. This is what we're up against. The structure is approximately 600 kilometers in diameter. It's protected by a defensive shield that we haven't been able to penetrate. The swarm keeps the vast majority of its forces in the nebula, using it as a staging ground for attacks on Dominion space. He gestured to a series of holographic markers. Our plan is simple. We're going to draw the swarm's attention with a diversionary force while the main fleet penetrates the nebula and destroys the structure. Admiral Kairel stepped forward, his mandibles clicking with concern. A diversionary force? That would be a suicide mission. The swarm will throw everything it has at any target that threatens the structure. Thorn nodded. That's the point. We want them to throw everything they have at the diversion. That's the only way the main fleet gets through. But the crews of the diversionary force? Volunteers. Thorn's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. Every human vessel in the diversionary fleet will be crewed by volunteers. We have an excess of personnel who are willing to make that sacrifice. Kairel stared at the human general in disbelief. You have soldiers who volunteer for certain death. We have soldiers who understand that some things are worth dying for. Thorn met Kairel's gaze, his expression unreadable. Every human who volunteers for this mission knows what they're doing. They're not heroes. They're not martyrs. They're soldiers doing what soldiers do. The Vethari officers exchanged glances, their scales rippling with unease. This was not how they fought wars. They preserved life. They minimized losses. They did not send their people into certain death. But then Kairel remembered the burning colonies, the refugees, the 2 centuries of slow defeat. And he understood that sometimes survival required sacrifice. What about the Vethari forces? He asked. What role do we play? You guard the flank. Thorn highlighted a region on the display. The swarm will try to outflank the diversion and attack the main fleet from the rear. Your ships will position themselves here, protecting our advance. Kairel nodded slowly. And the engineers, the platforms? They'll be with the main fleet. Thorn's voice took on a harder edge. We need to be able to repair and resupply during the engagement. The swarm's home structure isn't going to fall in one shot. We'll need to hit it, retreat, regroup, and hit it again. The engineering platforms will give us that capability. The briefing continued for another 3 cycles, covering every aspect of the operation. By the time it ended, Kairel felt a mixture of exhaustion and hope. The plan was audacious, dangerous, and entirely dependent on a series of assumptions that could easily prove wrong. But it was also the first real plan for victory that he had heard in 2 centuries. After the briefing, Kairel approached General Thorn in the quiet of the command center. The human was studying the same display he had been examining for cycles, his expression focused and intense. General, Kairel began, I need to ask you something. Thorn turned, his eyes meeting Kairel's. Ask. Your people, you're willing to sacrifice everything. Your ships, your soldiers, your engineering platforms. Why? What do you gain from this? Thorn was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than Kairel had ever heard it. We gain nothing, he said. We lose everything, but we also gain something else. We gained the knowledge that we did what was right. We gained the satisfaction of fighting a threat that would have consumed us eventually. We gained the chance to be the species that stood up and said, "No more." He looked away, his gaze distant. Humans have a complicated relationship with sacrifice. We've done terrible things to each other. We've committed atrocities that you can't even imagine. But we've also done incredible things. We've saved strangers. We've given our lives for people we never met. We've built civilizations out of rubble. He turned back to Karel. That's what we are, Admiral. We're a contradiction. We destroy and we create. We hate and we love. We kill and we save. But when it matters, when the stakes are highest, we rise to the occasion. His voice hardened. That's what's happening here. The swarm is a threat to everyone, not just you, not just us, everyone. And we're not going to let it win. Not because we're brave, not because we're noble, because we refuse to lose, because losing isn't in our nature. Karel felt something shift in his perception of these strange, violent, impossible beings. They weren't just warriors. They weren't just engineers. They were survivors. They had survived everything the universe had thrown at them, and they had emerged stronger, more determined, more willing to fight. And in that moment, Karel understood that the Vethari Dominion had not just found an ally. They had found something far more valuable. They had found hope. "We'll fight with you," Karel said. "We'll fight until the last ship, the last soldier, the last breath, because we also refuse to lose." Thorn nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Good." He turned back to the display, his attention already shifting to the next phase of the plan. But before he did, he spoke one last time. "Thank you, Admiral, for your courage, for your trust, for your willingness to fight alongside us. We won't forget it." Karel bowed his head, feeling something he hadn't felt in 200 cycles. Pride. And with it, a new determination to see this war through to its end. Chief Engineer Helena Richter worked with the manic energy of a woman who had been given a challenge that bordered on impossible. She stood in the heart of the engineering platform, surrounded by Vethari technicians who watched her with a mixture of awe and confusion. "You see this," she said, pointing to a schematic on the display. "This is the swarm's defensive shield. It's generating a frequency that prevents any weapon we have from penetrating. It's almost like they designed it to be impenetrable." One of the Vethari technicians, a young officer named Jakel, leaned forward. "We've tried every weapon in our arsenal against that shield. Nothing works. It's like trying to break through a wall with a feather." Richter grinned, her teeth showing in a way that made Jakel uncomfortable. "That's because you've been trying to break through it. The shield doesn't just block weapons. It analyzes them and adapts. Every time you hit it with something, it learns. It gets stronger." "So how do we stop it?" "We don't stop it." Richter pulled up a new schematic. "We trick it. We create a weapon that doesn't look like a weapon. We hit it with something it doesn't recognize, and by the time it adapts, we've already done our damage." She pointed to a diagram showing a projectile coated with a material that Jakel didn't recognize. "This is a new alloy we've been developing. It's designed to absorb the shield's energy and convert it into kinetic force. It's not a weapon. It's a carrier, a Trojan horse." Jakel stared at the diagram, his mind racing. "You're going to launch something at the shield that's designed to absorb its energy and turn it against it." "Exactly. The shield will try to absorb the projectile, thinking it's just another piece of debris. But when it does, the projectile will convert that absorbed energy into a focused blast that tears a hole in the shield. Then we send everything we have through that hole." The Vethari technicians exchanged glances, their scales rippling with disbelief. "That's insane. If the projectile absorbs too much energy, it could destabilize. It could detonate prematurely. It could." "I've already run the calculations." Richter's voice was calm, confident. "We have a 63% chance of success on the first attempt. That's high enough for me." Jakel felt his stomach drop. 63%. That means a 37% chance of failure. Richter nodded. "That's correct. But failure in this case means we try again. We learn from our mistakes. We adjust. We adapt, that's what we do. She turned back to the display, her hands already moving across the controls. I need 3 cycles to finish the prototypes. After that, we can start production. 3 cycles. Jekyll's voice rose in disbelief. It took our engineering core 300 cycles to develop the technology for the weapons we currently use. You're telling me you can build something new in 3 cycles? Richter looked at him, her expression softening. Your engineering core has been working under constraints we don't have. We've been developing weapons for thousands of years. We've failed more times than you can imagine, but we've also learned. We've adapted. We've gotten faster. She gestured to the engineering platform around them. This isn't a factory, it's a laboratory. We don't just build things. We create things. We solve problems. We make the impossible possible. Jekyll watched as Richter and her team began working on the prototype, their movements swift and precise. They didn't argue. They didn't hesitate. They worked together with a seamless efficiency that made the Vethari engineering core look like amateurs. What's your secret? Jekyll asked. How do you do it? Richter paused, looking at him with those strange human eyes. We don't have a secret. We just refuse to give up. When something doesn't work, we don't stop. We try something else. We keep trying until we succeed. Sometimes we succeed after 100 attempts, sometimes after 1,000, but we always succeed in the end. She smiled, and for the first time, Jekyll saw something in that smile that wasn't intimidating. It was reassurance. Your people have been fighting for 200 cycles. You've lost worlds, you've lost people, you've lost hope, but you haven't given up. That takes courage. That takes determination, and that's what we see in you. She turned back to her work. We're going to win this war, Jekyll, not because we have better weapons, not because we have more ships, because we have something your people have always had but forgot how to use. What's that? Richter's voice was soft, almost a whisper. The belief that we can win, that the universe isn't something that happens to us. It's something we shape, something we overcome. She pointed to the display where the prototype was beginning to take shape. This is our gift to you, not just a weapon, not just a shield. It's a reminder that you can fight back, that you can win, that the swarm isn't unbeatable. Jekyll felt something stir in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Thank you, he said, his voice barely audible. Thank you for everything. Richter nodded, her attention already back on her work. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we're standing on the ruins of the swarm's home world, watching it burn. Jekyll smiled, a rare expression for his species. I'll hold you to that. And as he watched the human engineers work, he realized that the Vethari Dominion had been fighting the wrong war. They had been fighting to survive, to preserve, to hold on to what they had. But that wasn't victory. That was desperation. Humanity had shown them what victory looked like. It wasn't about holding on. It was about taking back. It was about fighting until the enemy was destroyed, not just pushed back. And in that moment, Jekyll understood that the Dominion would never be the same. The war would change them, but it would also make them stronger, and that, more than anything else, was what humanity had given them. Hoping. The diversionary fleet moved into position at the edge of the Cygnus Nebula, 300 human warships arranged in a formation that looked like a mistake, but was actually a trap. Admiral Karel watched from the command center of the human flagship, his scales trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Swarm forces are responding, the tactical officer reported. They're moving to intercept the diversion. General Thorne nodded, his expression unchanged. How many? Approximately 2,000 ships, all heading for the diversion. That's more than we expected. Thorne turned to Karel. They're taking the bait. Karel felt his heart race. What about the main fleet? Hold position. We wait for the diversion to engage before moving through the nebula. The wait was agonizing. The diversionary fleet was sacrificing itself to give them a window of opportunity, and every moment of delay felt like a betrayal. But Karel understood the logic. The swarm needed to commit fully to the diversion before the main fleet could make its move. The engagement began with a flash of light that illuminated the nebula's edge. The human diversionary fleet had opened fire, their weapons cutting through the swarm's forward elements with devastating efficiency. "Swarm is responding," the tactical officer reported. "They're committing everything they have." Thorn watched the display, his jaw tight. Hold position, wait for the swarm to commit fully. The battle raged for what felt like cycles. The diversionary fleet was being hammered from all sides, their ships falling one by one. But they were exacting a terrible price from the swarm, destroying hundreds of ships with every volley. "Now," Thorn said, "move the main fleet into the nebula." The order was given, and Karel felt the flagship shudder as its engines engaged. The entire fleet moved with a precision that spoke of months of training, their ships sliding through the nebula's treacherous currents with an almost supernatural grace. "Swarm forces are responding," the tactical officer reported. "They're pulling back from the diversion." "How many?" "Approximately 300 ships. The rest are too heavily engaged to break free." Thorn smiled, a rare expression that made Karel uneasy. 300. That's manageable. Send the escorts to engage them. The rest of the fleet continues toward the structure. The escorts broke formation, moving to intercept the swarm forces that were racing toward them. The engagement was brief, brutal, and decisive. The human escorts used their speed and agility to outmaneuver the swarm's heavier vessels, disabling them with surgical strikes that left Karel breathless. "Structure is in visual range," the tactical officer reported. Karel looked at the display and felt his heart stop. The swarm's home structure was massive, a floating city of organic growth and mechanical components that pulsed with a malevolent energy. Defensive turrets covered its surface, and a shimmering shield protected it from attack. "Prepare the weapon," Thorn ordered. The engineering platform began its approach, flanked by the fleet's heaviest warships. The prototype weapon was loaded into its firing system, a slender projectile that looked almost insignificant compared to the massive structure it was supposed to destroy. "Shield is active," the tactical officer reported. "We're targeting the energy conversion point." The platform fired, and the projectile raced toward the shield at a speed that made Karel's eyes water. It hit the shield and was absorbed, just as Chief Engineer Richter had predicted. For a moment, nothing happened. The swarm's defensive shield flickered, absorbing the projectile's energy, and Karel felt his hope begin to fade. Then the shield began to glow. The glow intensified, spreading across the shield's surface like wildfire. And then, with a flash of light that temporarily blinded the sensors, the shield shattered. "Shield is down," the tactical officer reported. "Weapons are free." Thorn nodded. "Fire everything we have, target the structure's core." The fleet opened fire, and Karel watched in awe as wave after wave of weapons fire rained down on the swarm's home structure. The organic material on its surface began to burn, and the mechanical components started to break apart. "Structure is destabilizing," the tactical officer reported. "We're seeing massive internal explosions." "Keep firing," Thorn ordered. "Don't stop until there's nothing left." The bombardment continued for what seemed like cycles. The swarm's home structure, the source of 2 centuries of terror, began to disintegrate. Pieces of it fell away, burning in the nebula's radiation, and Karel felt something in his heart shift. They were winning. "Swarm forces are in retreat," the tactical officer reported. "They're abandoning the structure, moving in all directions." Thorn watched the display, his expression unreadable. "Let them run, they have no home now. They're scattered, leaderless, powerless. The swarm is finished." Karel felt tears streaming down his cheeks, a reaction he hadn't experienced since he was a child. "It's over," he whispered. "It's finally over." Thorn turned to him, his eyes softening. "It's not over, not yet, but this was the first step, the hardest step, and we took it together." Karel reached out, grabbing the human's hand with his own. Thank you for everything." Thorn nodded, a smile touching his lips. Don't thank me yet, we still have to finish this. But Karel already knew that the war was won. The swarm, for all its terror, was nothing compared to the determination, creativity, and sheer will of humanity. They had asked for refuge, and humanity had given them something far more valuable. They had given them victory. The swarm's home structure continued to burn as the coalition fleet moved in to secure the area. Karel stood in the command center, watching the debris of a civilization's creation drift through the nebula, and felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and triumph. We're detecting something, the tactical officer reported. A signal coming from the structure. Signal, Thorn moved to the display. What kind of signal? It's a transmission. We're decoding it now. The display flickered, and a voice filled the command center. It was ancient, cold, and utterly alien, but it spoke in a language that Karel's translator could process. Children of the stars, you have destroyed what you did not understand. Karel felt his scales tighten. What is this? Who is speaking? The voice continued, ignoring his question. We created the swarm to protect the galaxy, to prevent the spread of aggression, to preserve the balance between species. Thorn's eyes narrowed. Protect the galaxy from what? From themselves, from each other, from the endless cycles of violence that destroy civilizations and consume worlds. We saw the chaos that species would bring to the stars. We created the swarm to stop it. Karel felt his blood run cold. You created the swarm. You created the force that killed billions of our people. We created the swarm to prevent worse, to prevent extinction, to prevent the galaxy from being consumed by the wars that species wage against each other. Thorn stepped forward, his voice hard. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to play God with the lives of billions. The voice was silent for a moment. Then it spoke again, its tone different. Something else was in there now. You are different, the ones who destroyed the swarm. You are not like the others. We're humans, Thorn said. We're the ones who don't back down. Humans, yes, we have observed you, studied you. We saw your history, your wars, your atrocities. We judged you as a threat. We were right to do so. Thorn's expression darkened. You were wrong, we're not a threat. We're a species trying to survive. Survive, you fight each other. You destroy each other. You consume resources without thought. You spread across the galaxy like a disease. You are exactly what the swarm was created to stop. The tactical officer spoke up. General, we're detecting something. Energy signatures, thousands of them. They're coming from the structure's core. Karel's heart raced. What are they? The voice answered. The swarm's creator. We are awakening. We will respond to this threat. The galaxy will be cleansed. The display flickered, showing hundreds of massive ships emerging from the structure's core. They were ancient, powerful, and armed with weapons that made Karel's sensors go into overload. Those ships, the tactical officer breathed. They're bigger than anything we've ever seen. We can't fight that. We can't even scratch that. Thorn stared at the display, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Karel. Admiral, we need to make a decision. Karel nodded, his mouth dry. What choice do we have? You can retreat. Take your fleet, your people, and run. We'll provide cover. You'll have time. And what about you? What about humanity? Thorn smiled. We're not going anywhere. We're going to finish what we started. Karel stared at the human general, feeling something shift in his perception. These beings, these strange, violent, impossible beings, were willing to sacrifice everything. Their ships, their soldiers, their future, for a species they had never met. You can't win, Karel said. Those ships are too powerful, you'll be destroyed. Maybe, Thorn's voice was calm, confident, but we'll take as many of them with us as we can, and we'll make sure that when we fall, we don't fall alone. The Vethari command center fell into silence. The human crew watched the ancient ships approach, their expressions determined. They knew what was coming and they accepted it. And in that moment, Karel made a decision that would change his species forever. We're staying, he said. We're not running, not anymore. We've run for too long. Thorn turned to him, surprise flickering across his features. You don't have to do this. Your people need you. My people need hope. They need to believe that fighting for what's right is worth dying for. You gave us that hope, General, and we're not going to let it die. Kairel activated his command channel. All Vethari ships, prepare for engagement. We're going to fight alongside our human allies. The response was immediate. A chorus of affirmations from Vethari commanders across the fleet. Thorn nodded, a smile touching his lips. Thank you, Admiral, for your courage, for your trust, for your willingness to fight beside us. Kairel bowed his head. I wouldn't have it any other way. The ancient ships continued their advance, their massive forms blocking out the nebula's light. Kairel watched them approach, feeling his heart race with the same kind of terror he had felt as a child during his first encounter with the swarm. We can't fight them head-on, the tactical officer reported. They're too powerful. Our weapons won't even scratch their shields. Thorn nodded, his expression determined. Then we don't fight them head-on, we fight smart. We use what we learned from the swarm, we adapt, we overcome. He turned to the display. Show me their formations, their approach patterns, everything we can learn about them. The display flickered, showing the ancient ship's movements. They were slow, methodical, and predictable. They're not ready for us, Thorn said. They've been asleep for millennia. They're still waking up. We need to use that. We need to hit them before they're fully operational. Kairel stared at the display, his mind racing. How? We don't have the firepower to destroy them. No, but we have something else. We have the engineering platforms. Richter stepped forward, her face pale but determined. We've been working on something. A weapon designed to target ancient technology. It's not ready, but with your permission, we can deploy it now. Thorn nodded. Do it. Richter moved to her console, her hands flying across the controls. We're going to target their power cores. The weapon will create a cascade failure. Their shields will collapse and they'll be vulnerable. How long? 3 cycles. We need 3 cycles. Then we give you 3 cycles. Thorn turned to his tactical officers. All ships, form a defensive perimeter around the engineering platforms. We're going to buy the engineers time. Kairel felt his heart race. And the Vethari ships. You join the perimeter. We're going to hold them back, no matter what. The battle that followed was the most brutal Kairel had ever witnessed. The ancient ships were unstoppable, their weapons carving through the coalition fleet like hot knives through ice. Human ships fell, Vethari ships fell, and Kairel felt his hope beginning to fade. We can't hold them much longer, the tactical officer reported. We're losing ships faster than we can replace them. Richter looked up from her console. We need more time. Thorn nodded. Give me your weapon, I'll take it to them. Kairel stared at the human general in disbelief. You can't, that's suicide. Maybe, Thorn's voice was calm, determined. But it's the only way. I'll take my ship through their lines and deploy the weapon directly. It'll give the rest of the fleet time to regroup. Kairel wanted to object. He wanted to point out that Thorn was making an impossible choice, but he saw something in the human's eyes. Not desperation, not fear, determination. Go, Kairel said. We'll hold them back as long as we can. Thorn nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Thank you, Admiral, for everything. And then he was gone, racing toward the ancient ships with a speed that defied belief. Kairel watched the human ship disappear into the enemy fleet, feeling his heart race with a mixture of fear and hope. He had seen humans do impossible things. He had seen them fight, adapt, overcome. He had seen them turn defeat into victory against all odds. And now he would see them do it again. The ancient ships continued their advance, but something was changing. Their shields were flickering, their weapons were faltering, and their formations were breaking apart. The weapon, the tactical officer breathed. It's working. Kairel watched as the ancient ships began to disintegrate, their power cores exploding in a chain reaction that spread across the entire fleet. "We did it," Karel whispered. "We actually did it." But even as the words left his mouth, he felt a pang of loss. Thorn's ship was gone, consumed by the blast. The human general had given his life to save them all. The survivors gathered in the aftermath, their ships battered and broken. The ancient civilization had been defeated, its power broken, its threat ended. The swarm was no more. And Karel stood in the ruins of the battle, watching the human survivors honor their fallen general. "He died for us," Karel said. "He died for all of us." A human officer, his face streaked with soot, nodded. "That's what we do. We sacrifice. We give everything. Because we believe that some things are worth dying for." Karel bowed his head, tears streaming down his cheeks. "We will never forget what you did for us, what humanity did for us. We will honor it. We will remember it. We will teach our children about the day when the humans came and saved us all." The human officer shook his head. "We didn't save you. We fought beside you. That's what makes us human. We don't save people. We fight with them. We win together." Karel reached out, clasping the human's hand. "Then we will fight together, always, for as long as we both live." The human nodded, a smile touching his lips. "Together." And in that moment, Karel understood something profound. Humanity had come not to save the Vethari, not to destroy the swarm, but to stand with them, to fight with them, to be their allies in a universe that was too often cruel and unforgiving. They had asked for refuge, and humanity had given them something far more valuable. They had given them strength, purpose, hope. And in the end, that was enough. And